Hi, I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Inner Edison. What I'd like you to take away from today's show is our greatest growth comes from our greatest failures. Today's guest is Adam Adams, and let's welcome him and get to know his story. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
All right. Easy name for people to remember, huh?
Right. Adam A. Adams, AAA.
That's right. All right. So my listeners aren't going to know who you are. I've researched it a little bit, but why don't you tell them kind of your story, and then we'll get into the old grow your show thing that you're about.
Yeah. My story, I grew up in Utah. My dad was a real estate investor. I started doing real estate investments because he basically made me. He bought the first piece of property, gifted it for me to, for like Christmas or something. And then he made me pay for it. He cared about real estate investing that much. So I've been doing real estate investing since 2005. I started my first podcast in 2017 about 16 or 17 about real estate investing. I ended up selling that podcast, and I started a company around podcasting. We've been able to help a lot of podcasters just kind of grow to ranking in top 1% in the world. And it's just been a lot of fun. We've been at and about it for like 2.5 years, and the team kind of cool. I love it. Just, I would say 2 weeks ago, we crossed 30 full-time employees. So it's kind of fun.
Wow. That's amazing. And I'm horrible for your dad to force you to be in a real estate investing. I mean, God, what a horrible dad. If everybody could have that horrible dad, I tell you. Yeah, and that's what a lot of people don't realize, how important. That's why I do a lot of shows on. I have a real estate radio show, podcast, other stuff, because for me, building personal wealth through home ownership is like the greatest thing that you can do, because you don't have to be active in it all the time. But this isn't about me, but I'm just talking about the whole real estate thing that you've talked about. That's huge, and it allows you to do other things, right?
Yeah, it's been really, really good. 2020 was not a good year. I'll say that much.
Not if because you didn't get all your payments, but
yeah. I went from honestly thinking I was living the dream, and I was basically retired. I mean, I was still working, but I could have retired, to making almost no income in 2020. We had 1,400 and something apartments. And all of a sudden we stopped distributions, and I'm like, this is not good. So I think it's good takeaway for the listener to know, regardless of where you are. First off, don't be too prideful about it, like I was. Secondly, multiple streams of income is probably better than just putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right. I totally agree. That's why I do a lot more stuff now than I used to. I mean, I was strictly mortgage industry. That's all I did. And, I have a few pieces of property, but, I saw what happened. And like right now, I mean, no one knows where the commercial market's going, right? In certain places. I'm in California, and we still don't know. I mean, all my people work from home, and that's just for me because I don't want to wear a mask. So
same.
When I'm in the office,
masks are freaking itchy. I hate those things. I went to some Van Gogh, there's this Van Gogh art thing coming into Denver, which is where I live, and it was like the first time I had to wear a mask in I don't know how long, because they required it. And as soon as we walk out of that place, I ripped that thing off, and I'm like itching my beard. I'm like, oh, I hate those things. So hopefully we don't have to wear masks for too much longer.
Well, you never know. For us, it's like all of a sudden they were like, okay, once you guys get to here, and that should be by Tuesday. And then all of a sudden the numbers change, and now the numbers are higher, and they're not even moving down. And one of the things, my wife's a nurse at Kaiser, and she's like, well, the problem is only sick people are getting tested that know they have COVID, and they're coming out tested with positive. So all they're getting is positive numbers. There is not a group of thousands of other people going and being negative. There's only the group of positive. So they need to change how they do it. I'm not saying she said that, but that's what I'm saying. But this is not a podcast about politics, because we could be here forever about that kind of stuff. But me being a podcast, I can't say I'm a podcaster. I'm so many other things, but radio show host, I turn that into a podcast, and I do multiple podcasts. It is difficult to get, first of all, the downloads you want, right? We all think our show's amazing. And I had somebody else when we talked about this, it was about, there's only 2 reasons to do a podcast. One is because you want to do you want to make money from the podcast when the downloads, right? But that takes a long time. The other one is to build your business that you do now. And I think a lot of people are in that boat where they want to build the business that they're in, and this helps them get that word out there more. I had a guy on yesterday doing the show, and he's like, man, you sure put out a lot of content. And it's like, because they told me I was supposed to put out a lot of content. So I finally, you find out how easy, and I don't mean easy, but it's what I do all day long is talk. So if I can take that and put into this and get more stuff from it, I'm going to do it.
If
so
I had a voice like yours, I would talk all day too.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. That's why I sold by the phone for the first 18 years of my life in the mortgage industry. And I did really well, not only because of my voice, but because I made sure I knew how to sell. Right. And that's what I'm doing an event this week coming up, and I'm talking about how to sell and how the objections are, there's only so many of them that you have in a transaction, and you need to know them and put them in all the way through your sell. So that way, when you're talking to somebody, so you don't have those and you answer all their questions. And it's about persuading. Salespeople persuade people to do stuff, which means you help them do what they want to do already. Right.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people go, I'm not in sales. Well, you have a thing that you do right now for people, grow your show. You have to sell us on the idea that it's a benefit and features and everything for us. Everybody sells one way or another. So it's important to know how to talk to people so you can get your point across.
Yeah.
And not offend people.
Even I think your wife's in sales. Nurses, doctors, podcasters, mortgage professionals, real estate professionals. It doesn't matter what we do. Parents are in sales.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You have to know how to, you have to know this skill, and the better you know it, the better you can help people to get what they want and to move forward. And that's what it's all about, helping people get what they want by asking a lot of questions. And that's what we do on even podcasts. And why I love it so much, I'm curious about you. I want to know why you're doing what you're doing and the whole 9 yards. Now, my wife hits me a lot when I'm out at dinner or whatever, and I'm asking somebody, I have so many questions of why they voted a certain way. And it's not like I'm jumping on them. I want to know what you thought when you were checking that box or for some certain thing. That's the same thing we do here. We have to ask questions. So my first question is for you, all right, so you had a podcast, you sold it, and then you got it. Now you have a company with 30 employees. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I know how employees are. They're great. They're amazing. Okay. Next, right? I mean, because it's people. You're dealing with people. If you could take people out of companies, employees, it would be so much better. But then why go to work? But anyway,
on that point though, I've been extremely lucky. I have had to get rid of a couple, over the past couple of years, but I think we've been lucky. When we hire, there's a couple steps that we do. One of them, I don't know if you've ever heard of Predictive Index, and I think this is beneficial for anybody listening. Predictive Index, we just call it PI, but it's a personality profiling that's more accurate than most of the other ones, like the DISC.
So it's better. I was going to say like DISC, because I know DISC. We use DISC in our industry. Okay,
it's pretty much DISC, but if you hire and fire based on DISC, apparently you could get in trouble by, I don't know, the Labor Commission or something. But if you hire and fire based on Predictive Index, it's the only one that's accurate enough that it is legal for you to base decisions with it. So it's pretty interesting, but we focus a lot on that. And then we focus a lot on culture, like basically taking whatever my values are, and they're not going to be the same as yours. We both have high values, but they're just different high values. I might care more about windows and you might care more about doors, for example, but whatever my values are, I try to hire based to make sure my team cares about those same things. And I would say you're right. There are always frustrating parts anyway, but I got incredibly lucky. I have to shout out my team. I'm really blessed.
Yeah. I'm not saying I have a bad team. I'm just saying in general, I hear people complain about their employees all the time. And you have to hire slow and fire fast. I mean, that's just the way it is. And you can tell this isn't a good fit for you, but that's what during the process, you should know that before you hire people. Our problem was we went through 2020. Everybody's like, oh, we did what we normally do in 10 years in 1 year, and we couldn't find enough people in the amount of loans we did. And yeah. And so then you come on the other side, and then you got these younger processors are like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not fun. I had one who's like, I'm going to go work with kids. I go, this must be really bad if you want to go work with kids, because all my kids are grown. I'm just saying, it's like, takes a unique individual to want to work with children. So,
yeah.
All right. So let's talk about your business, since we're on that subject.
Absolutely.
Of business. All right. So how do you help? So how did you see this niche, or what you're trying to, that people needed help here? Was it because you came into it, or was it just?
It was almost by accident. I did come into it. And then eventually, as I was doing my own podcast, which was for the same reasons you just mentioned before, it's like, I think you said there was 2 reasons people start podcasts: either to make money with the podcast, or to grow their business so that their business is making more money. And that was where I was. I was number 2 in your description before. So I started this podcast about real estate investing. My ultimate goal as a real estate investor, all of us, it doesn't matter how good we are, we eventually have to use other people's money. If we want to keep growing, like, I don't care if you have $50 billion. If as soon as that's gone, you've got to start using other people's money. And I wasn't ever a 50 billionaire, and still am not even a 50 billionaire. But as I was kind of like growing that business, I enjoyed my podcast, and new people that wanted to have a podcast, they would just come to me only because I had one. Like, I didn't even consider myself an expert or anything like that. But the kind of cool thing is that I've always been the type of person to just kind of look at what everybody's doing and try a new angle. And when I was helping just friends for free, I didn't even charge or anything like that. All of a sudden, their podcast became a lot more famous than mine, because we launched their shows a little bit better. Like, we had a better launch plan. We had a better, we knew who the avatar was, stuff like that. And so all of my friends who I helped them start podcasts, they were literally ranking in the top 1%. One of them started a podcast at the same time as this super famous podcasting company started a podcast, and he ended up becoming top 10 in 4 different categories. And he was number 1 in the business category. And this company started their business podcast for business people, and they were number 4 in the business category. And I just remember just feeling so proud. And I just helped a lot of people for free. And eventually it was kind of, I guess the best way to say it is, as a real estate investor focusing on real estate investing, I finally said, I'm going to have to start a company, because everybody keeps coming to me because they want to start a podcast and become top 1%. And so I did that in 2019, July of 2019 is when I finally just said, I'm going to have this be a company. And I'm glad that I did, honestly, because 2020 for my real estate went down. And if I didn't have that extra thing to start like growing in 2020, I would have been, my kids would have had a hard time eating, right? So it was kind of cool. That's why I started it. That's how I started it. And our niche is a little bit different. It's nobody else does this except for us, is we guarantee our clients will be ranked in the top 1%, or else we give them their money back. And so far, we haven't had to give any money back. We have a 6-month guarantee. It'll happen within 6 months. And so that's our niche. That's why I started it. That's how I started it. And that's why I grew it and focused on growing it in 2020, is because the real estate wasn't working out so well. And now finally the real estate's back. And then this is a little bit bigger company than it used to be.
Right. And it's not so much the real estate market's back. It's just the fact that people are making their payments. Right.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's funny? For most of our properties, out of the 1,400 doors, like almost all of them were making payments, except for we had an 83 unit apartment in Branson, Missouri. We still have it, but Branson, Missouri, which is like, there almost nobody lives there. Only people that go there are traveling. And so that one we ended up losing a lot of money. But the real reason why we stopped doing distributions wasn't because those other properties weren't necessarily making money. It was because as operators of these properties, we decided that we had to stop distributions in case something were to happen. So for 4 quarters in a row, we didn't pay out to our passive investors or ourselves for 4 quarters in a row. So yeah, my income completely changed.
Well, at least it's better now. So,
Yeah, it's back finally.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there was one here locally I'm close to the Bay Area, and there's a company that's a tech company, and this lady bought this 6-unit place, and she had these people, rent from her because she's thinking it's a huge tech company. There's no way. And I won't say who they are, but you usually use them to search these days. And so those 6 people that work for that company got together and said, let's not pay rent. So none more paid rent to her for the full year.
Oh, that's terrible.
And they're working. And that's the one thing that if you're working, you're supposed to make your rent payment.
Is it like in California or something?
Yeah, it was in California. Yeah, I'm in California.
Horrible.
I'm in Modesto, California. So it's in the Bay Area over there. Yeah, and the poor lady, I mean, it's like it was her. And that's the problem, is they hurt the small investor. They're not, these people own these buildings. They're not these huge corporations. Yes, there's some of those, but most of the ones that are getting hurt are the small guys. I had a gentleman, and then we'll get back to the podcast. Same thing though. He had 10 different properties, and he put them all up for sale because none of them were making payments. And I have a guy who's really good in the property management. He goes, I could have got him to make the payments. I was like, oh, well, he's selling them. Let's move on.
Yeah.
All right. So podcasting, how do you help people rank higher in it? Is it, how does that process? Do you want to can you say what you can do, or
I can share the process in case anybody wants to do it. It's easier to do for us as a third party. When we're helping other people, we are the third party basically acting on your behalf. And it really helps by being a third party. You can certainly do it yourself, or you could maybe hire like a virtual assistant or even an assistant or a different company to kind of do the same thing. But we do a lot of different marketing. The main one that seems to work the best is a private message campaign, because nobody else is really doing it. It's a lot of work. We have 32 employees, and we only have just under 60 clients right now. So it's like a lot of staff, a lot of labor in order to be able to serve these people. But at any rate, here's the exact process. And I mean, I'm willing to share all the nuggets. Basically, what we'll end up doing is we'll create, what my team does, because we used to use real accounts. We can't do it anymore. We have to create a fake, a new profile, like a Facebook profile, a meetup.com profile, if you guys know what that is, and like a LinkedIn.com profile, or a biggerpockets.com profile. Just depends on what social network we need to connect with. And basically what we do is we create a new profile, and then we have our staff do 8 hours a day for our top clients. They'll just work the entire day, just private messaging on that person's behalf. And here's the thing that you all need to just take note of. These 5 things must happen during these private messages. Now, happy to go into very much detail on private messages to make sure that it's like really tangible. But these are the 5 things that must happen, or we won't be able to trigger the algorithms within the podcast space. So if we want to trigger the algorithms for podcasts, we have to hit these 5 things, and they are followers. They used to be called subscribers, by the way, but followers to the podcast. That's number 1. Number 2 is we need those followers to actually download episodes. That's pretty easy to pay, like on Fiverr, for fake downloads. This is not what we are needing to do. Because you'll notice that if you are just getting like downloads by themselves, but not followers and downloads and these other 3, then it'll actually work against you. You'll trigger the algorithm to basically shadow ban you, to block you. So if you're doing like fake stuff or whatever, you'll absolutely get blocked. But if you're doing all 5 of these, it boosts you up in the rankings. So followers, downloads from the followers, listens, like actual playthroughs. So you got to get those people to listen. The 4th one is that they'll take action and give social proof by rating and reviewing the podcast. And the 5th one is incredibly important. It's that person, that human being, needs to keep coming back to the podcast over and over and over. And so the way that we do this with like the private message campaign is we have a very natural outreach on the private message campaign. So we have a template. I call it hook, story, offer. A lot of people use that, but it's basically hook, story, offer. So we'll say something like, we'll go to, if in the real estate space, because I know you and I are both in real estate. So we'll just use that. I have like 20 something clients that are real estate investors or real estate agents. And when we are helping them, we'll go to this thing called like biggerpockets.com, create an account. And the original outreach says something like this. Hey man, I just saw that you closed a deal in Ohio. That's awesome. That's the hook. The story is, we put in there, curious how you got started, ? And that could be the offer. It could be like 2 sentences with a question or 3 sentences, absolute max. And what we're basically doing is making sure that these outreach become something where we're going to get people to reply back. And part of that is ask, don't tell. So versus like just telling people stuff, hey, here's this awesome podcast, here's the link to it, you're just going to get flagged as spam. So that's just the opposite of what we do. We'll jump in, we'll connect, we'll say something personal about them and ask them how they got started in real estate, for example. And then they would reply and say, hey, this is how I got started. And then we'll say, hey, I'm curious about hiring a real estate coach. Do you suggest it? And what would be the budget that I should have in mind? And then they'll come back and they'll say something like, I wouldn't hire a real estate coach. There's a lot of free content out there. And then we'll say, how do I get a hold? Then we'll ask that this is like our third message. How do we get a hold of like the free content? What do you suggest? And they might give us a couple of podcasts. Okay. And so what we'll do is we'll listen to the podcast. This is why we have so many staff to serve this many people. So we'll listen to the podcast and then we'll say, hey, thank you for sharing that with me. This is what I liked. And by the way, have you ever heard of this other podcast in the real estate space, for example? And then they're like, oh, no, I haven't. And then we will pinpoint a specific episode that we really liked of our client's podcast. Again, this works really well as a third party, but you can find a way to do this self-promotion, I'm sure, or just hire your own virtual assistant. Then we basically reach out and then reach back out to them and say, oh, if you listen to episode 110, it solves this problem. I'd be happy to queue you up with the link if you want me to, ? We never send a link unless they ask. And it's very important if you don't want to get flagged as spam. So then they say, yeah, please share the link. And we basically share that with them. And so now they are finally subscribed or following that podcast. And then to make sure that they're downloading and listening, all we do is just ask them what they thought of it. Now, reciprocity, we've already told them what we thought about the one that they shared. We already gave details. It's pretty hard for them not to do that. So then they come back and they basically just say, oh yeah, I liked this and this and this about it. And then we basically agree. We agree with them. We go, actually, it can get a little weeded. And I don't know how detailed you want me to go for your listener.
I'm following it. So we're good. Yeah.
So basically what we'll do.
So basically you're having a conversation with somebody to actually go back and forth and not just one time talk. You're actually building. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you're a handsome man. And the way that you probably found your spouse because you're handsome is you went into you probably met her at the grocery store. Who knows? You walk into the grocery store or the bar or anywhere else and you say, hey, you're sexy. I'm hot. We should get married. Is that how you met your wife?
Pretty much.
So for the most part, we just make sure that we're not asking for we're not proposing on the first, meeting. And so we just kind of slow play. We just create a friendship, a community, a connection. And then later on, we'll just say, hey, do you want to hear this podcast? I'd be happy to share the link if you do. If they say yes, then we share it with them. And then as we go down, a lot of the times we are using 2 psychological things for what we're doing. Reciprocity, it's the law of reciprocity, right? Things that we do, people do back. The second one is that we will human beings have a need to be congruent with what they say. You mentioned, I think it was in the pre-interview, or maybe it was in the beginning of this interview, you mentioned you asked people why did they vote for the people that they voted for.
Or I just asked them questions. So
Yeah. So for example, we as humans, speaking of politics, if I'm Republican or Democrat, I will likely always be Republican or Democrat. And sometimes I won't even know anything about my candidate, but I'm still going to vote for them. It's kind of strange. Like sometimes the candidate could have done this bad thing that we don't agree with, but we will still vote for them.
Or their son.
Because humans need to be congruent. And so one of the things that we do is once they say, I liked X, Y, and Z about that episode, we basically say, I liked X, Y, and Z also. In fact, here's a review that I just left today saying the exact same thing. And so we just take a screenshot of whatever review that we wrote right now today for that podcaster, and we just send it to them and say, check it out. I mean, and if you really liked it that much, because I want you to be congruent with your words, if you really like it that much, you should send a review as well. And we get a huge majority of people that are listening to these episodes to actually give it an honest rating and review. And then the fifth one is after the fourth one, which was social proof, ratings and reviews. We just get them to come back. And all we really do is, hey, did you hear Ed's last podcast? That was dope, right? The one with Adam Adams. Epic. I learned X, Y, and Z from it. Did you hear that one? And Ed, the guy or girl might say, oh, yeah, I just listened to it. Or they might say, I haven't heard that one yet. And we say, happy to queue it up for you if you want. And we just keep doing this every now and again. And this is why we have a 6-month contract for the people that we work with, because it takes a long time to get that. But if they do all 5, follow, download, listen, rate and review, and then come back, we'll trigger algorithms within the podcast space, which will allow that podcast to get boosted up in the ranks. And so more people see it. So far, we are flawless. I'm sure we'll make a mistake and have to give somebody their money back. But so far, we're doing a really good job, and the way we're doing it is actually working. So,
and I think people don't. This is why a lot of podcasts fail, right? Because there's a lot of work. Right.
Yeah.
And people don't realize all that goes into it, time, money. People go, I want to start a podcast. And then 7 episodes into it, they're like, I'm done. I don't want to keep going. And then other ones, like, there's a lot of work to get ranked up there to do exactly what you're doing. That's a lot of work. And so you need somebody else to do that for you. Even editing it and putting it out there on social media and cutting it up and doing all that. There's another whole avenue that people don't realize, and it's expensive. To do that.
It certainly can be. We do all those things for $175 an episode, and I think it's like a really good deal. Basically, we call ourselves the easy button for podcasters. Just all they do is press record. It goes to cloud. We literally email the guest for them. We create all the promo. We write the show notes. We edit it. We publish it. We promote it. So I don't think it has to be that expensive. $175 per episode, I think, is fairly affordable.
That's a good price, because I know on average it's like $250. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah, on average.
My team's mostly in the Philippines, right. So I just pass that savings on to my clients.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people's teams in the Philippines or somewhere else. That's
These
where everybody's going.
Right?
Yeah, everybody's doing that virtual assistant and everything else like that. So
yeah, I agree.
So how long does it take to get to the top 1%? A year? 6 months on average?
It's guaranteed within 6 months. A lot of our clients, it'll take 3 or 4, but it'll definitely be within 6.
All right. So you do all this. How long do you have to keep doing it to stay there? Or is it set up? Hold on, let me finish. Or is it set up to where once you got 6 months or whatever you plan, that it will continue on its own?
I love the question, because we're really talking about what is going to happen on the back end, right? Well, what's going to happen? Am I going to pay you to do your stuff? I'm going to get there, and then I'm going to lose it. So we used to not have a 6-month contract, and most of our clients, if they did they would come and dabble with us for 1 month, and we would literally lose money because we're putting up ads for a 7-month period. And like, we're doing also banner ads and Facebook ads and things like that for our clients. But at any rate, people would come for like 1 month, dabble. They wouldn't know if it was like working yet. And so they would quit. And my team was losing a ton of money. So we started doing 4-month contracts for 8 and 12 for a little while. We don't do it anymore. But about 1 in 3 clients who did 4 months, when they stopped doing it with us, 1 in 3 would actually grow and 2 in 3 would shrink. So once we got it, so it was 6 months or more, most of our clients grow after we stop. Most of our clients are continuing to increase the amount of listener base that they have, the rankings that they have, from perhaps top 1% to top 0.5% over the next few months. A good example is Derek Wilson from the Primal King podcast. We started work with him. He had like 1,300 downloads per month, and then we got him to like 6,000 after the first 4 months. But we have not been working with Primal King for a while, for like 4 more months. And where he is now is at 8,000 to 9,000 downloads per month with his 4 episodes. And so he's like the 1 in 3 that worked out after 4 months. After we decided, I was actually afraid. I was afraid to give a 6-month contract. I don't know why, but I was like, dude, nobody wants to be locked in for 6 months. That was my fear. And then I realized, hey, I'm not going to be serving people unless I do at least 6 months, because it's a slow play. We don't usually meet somebody and get married within 6 months unless you're Mormon. That doesn't really happen. So at any rate, we just started doing 6 and 12, and most of our clients actually grow after we leave them.
And by the way, he's from Utah, so he could say that.
Yeah, I was born on a polygamous colony. So
yeah, so there you go. Yeah. So I don't want any bad hate mail there, people.
No.
Yeah. All right. So it sounds, as I said before, this is a lot of work. First of all, to have the episodes, get the people on the episodes, to let everybody know what's going on. This is a lot of work. It really is. And people really need to know that going into this, that if you're going to do a podcast, it's not, hey, we want to do a podcast. It's like, how are you going to handle this, and this? I got lucky because I had some people I knew that, were doing podcasts and like, hey, we'll handle it. This is what we'll do, blah, blah, blah. Right. You just record them, drop them, we'll cut them. We'll do all this. We'll do the blog for it and all that, put it on your website, do all the other stuff, upload it, which works. But I do like so many other ones now. Right. So like I have my radio show that is a podcast afterwards. I just put up to SoundCloud, which is, I found out afterwards, anyway. There's so many other better places or other things for what you're trying to do. So that one, I don't even do. It's not even being pushed. And we do about 1,000 downloads a month, which just doesn't sound like much, but we have 51 to 71,000 listeners on the weekend listening to us. So wow. They're there. I'm trying to get them over there. You follow me? I'm trying to get them offline to the lives I do and other stuff. So there's a lot of play I need to do here, but it looks like it can be very expensive from looking at your website. Not that your costs are high. I'm just saying that it's costly to do this than to build it. And that's the other part where I was talking about why are you doing this? Are you doing this to build your business that you do? Or are you trying to make money from it? Because you need 10,000 downloads a month to start making money, right?
Is it okay if I disagree with you on your podcast?
You can. This is not. This is. Yeah. This is.
I started making money on my creative real estate podcast that I sold a long time ago before I ever had a listener.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me go.
Yeah, go ahead.
But you started so long ago.
True.
There's not 500,000 podcasts back then, right? There's a lot less. So it's a different world now. We're a lot more. You can disagree. I don't care if you agree with me or not. I don't care. It's not about, I'm not authoritarian. It's, this is both sides. I need to know what's going on, and whether I'm right or wrong, I want to know. But
so we work with, and I have friends even that I don't work with that are monetizing their show with fewer downloads than 10,000. I think a lot of people, they put like I've heard a lot of people say the minimum is 6,000 or the minimum is 10,000. or the minimum is 30,000 downloads a month, or downloads per episode sometimes. But I have been able to help just a few of our clients who want to monetize that are underneath that by actually reaching out to certain sponsors. So they're the ones reaching out, and they're the ones offering the opportunity. Hey, would you like to be part of this for the XYZ amount of money? And so we have a few clients that are making $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, and $10,000 a month. And they are between 4,000 downloads a month and 23,000 downloads per month. And they're able to make decent money. It pays for more than it costs to work with us. But so I think, like, what's that book? It's another real estate book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. That you know Robert Kiyosaki, right? Mm-hmm. He always says, don't say I can't, say how can I? Instead of saying I can't. And I think of the same thing for, like, monetizing a podcast, right? Like, don't say I can't do it until 6,000, 10,000, or 30,000 downloads. Say, how could I? What would I need to do to still be able to monetize, even though I'm below that number, below that threshold that other people are telling me? And so far, our clients that want to monetize through sponsorship revenue are able to do it. Even many of them are still below, like, that 10,000 number, for example, and they're making 5,000-6,000 at that level. And I think other people can too. I want the listener to, like, not feel like there's an absolute threshold. I think there's always a way, you know.
And it's going to depend on your podcast too, right?
I think it's going to absolutely depend on
what you're
the genre, who's
your
avatar, the listener, and who you're reaching out to. For, like, a real estate podcast, we can reach out to hard money lenders or mortgage companies like yours, and most lending companies have a bigger budget than and most real estate coaches. A real estate coach might charge, we'll just say, $30,000 per client. And so when that person gets one client, it's 30 grand. So it's like a real estate coach, for example, might be willing to put 10 grand a month to your podcast, even if it's a smaller podcast, because they know that over the course of a year, it's only 120,000 out, but maybe they're making 3 million in. And so it kind of makes sense for them.
Right.
So it just depends.
Right. So what you're saying is, like, my Helping the Brave one, we could get USAA, we could get any of those other places.
I think so. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But that one is, we just been doing lives because we've had no budget for it, right? So we do, and it all goes to YouTube, so it's not even posted anywhere on any of the other places. So there's a lot of extra stuff I need to do on that one, because that's a huge movement, and there's a bunch of us now. So amazing show today. I mean, not my part, your part, with you telling everything about it. I'm just saying it's because it makes it to where, oh wow, I don't have to do 10. When I said 10,000, that's what I keep hearing, right? I hear it everywhere, right? That's the number that you keep hearing.
Everyone says that. Yeah. Everyone has a number. You go to the podcast websites or the Facebook groups of podcasts, and everybody's got a number. They're like, don't even think about monetizing until you get, and then they give you a number. And the main ones that I hear is 6,000, 10,000, and 30,000. And I know that it's much easier to do when you're hitting those numbers, but again, it comes back down to Robert Kiyosaki. Don't say I can't, just say, like, how could I? Like, what is the way for me to still do this, even though a lot of people say I can't? If I can give you just one example, when I was buying a property a long time ago, I know you're in the mortgage.
I was just joking. Yeah, of course you can give any example you want, man. I
know you're in the mortgage industry, so this matters to me. In 2008, I was buying an apartment building, and my income was decent. My credit was decent, but the thing is, my company was brand new. I had only had 1 year of taxes, and this was at October of 2008 when I was buying this. And it was right after stated loans stopped, like 3 weeks before that. And I would have been fine. But it was right after stated loans stopped, and they were being more cautious and careful. I went to, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 different lenders, and everybody was like, we can't. And so I was reading Robert Kiyosaki that right while I was doing that in 2008. And so I remember saying, don't say I can't. How can I? And so I went to just a friend and I said, hey man, would you purchase this property? Because he had made a lot of money in real estate. Would you purchase this property for cash and then make a loan out to me so that I can own this property? Here's my credit. Here's my thing. The only thing that the banks have been seeing is that I don't have 2 years of tax returns. And the guy said yes. And if he would have said no, I would have kept asking, but he said yes. And so I had to get a private money loan versus a regular mortgage company. But it only came because I wouldn't really take no for an answer. You know what I mean? And I think that your listener can do the same thing, whether it's their podcast or whatever they're trying to achieve. So
right. I always say, how can we make this happen? Right.
Yes.
And last weekend I was in Las Vegas for my wife's birthday, and we went to dinner at Spago, and they had us at this one table, but right there was a window. Right. And I wanted the table by the window, and they just left. So I walked up, I said, how can we make this happen so I can get moved to that one? And they did it. It's just a matter of asking. You have to ask, but you're right. It's a matter of figuring out a way to get it done. That's what I do all day long. Figure out ways to get things done that other people say can't be done. The podcast part, I mean, it's just, you have knowledge in this from being in it longer than most other people have been in this. And it is, and when I say it's tougher today, I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying you have more competition, but I forget the number they threw out there, was some big number, but I would say probably, I don't know, 60%, 50% of that was probably people who have 10 episodes and haven't done anything, right?
I don't remember the number either right now offhand, but I think it's higher than you said. I think.
Yeah, I was trying to be nice.
I think it was something like
80,
90%. It was something like, I could be wrong, but it was something like 90% of podcasts don't have more than 6 episodes, or
wow,
maybe it was 50% that didn't have more than 6 episodes. But the point is, you're dead on. There is a lot of competition. As we record this, there's a little over 2.7 million podcasts, but most of those podcasts are not active or not good, or they didn't really market. So if you're going to market your show, you're going to get in the top 10% with ease. Or if you're going to market it the way we do it, you're going to probably get in top 1% or higher. So
just, well, that's probably the same with any business these days. If there's competition, then there's a market, right? So you always want to go where there's competition, because that means there's a market for it.
I love it.
And it's all about marketing. Everything's about marketing. My 2 degrees are about marketing too. So
love it.
Yeah. So I understand all that. So, and anything else you want to add today before we go?
Yeah,
Adam?
sure. Let's finish with this one thing. You mentioned that when you start a podcast, you need to kind of keep working at it, or you need to put fuel to the fire. And I will use a metaphor for that for anyone who wants to start a podcast. It's like you're saying to yourself, I want to start a fire. And so you put 2 or 3 logs on, you get a fire started. It burns out fairly short. And the reason why is because you stopped feeding the fire. So if you are going to start a podcast, if you are going to start a fire, make sure you have some wood sitting there. Make sure you continue to stoke it, add fuel to it. And I think that's the way that you're going to be able to grow something to a beautiful level that is going to feed your business the way that you want it to.
Right. And I think so too. Consistency. Listeners want consistency. They want to know that you're going to be every Tuesday. If that's your day, you're going to be there. There's going to be an episode at that time that they can listen to. They want that. They don't want to go, where's that episode? And then in a month from now, you decide to do 2 more episodes in there. And then you lose your listeners that you've just built. So it's important to have a process and, get on things and figure out who's your guest ahead of time. Right. That's really important. Our, Inner Edison, our greatest accomplishments come from our greatest defeats. Kind of what you kind of talked about a few things that we went through, but our biggest, as a podcaster, our biggest issue is getting our stuff out there, getting in the rankings. How do we do that? And you've actually gave us a great way to do that. So thank you for being on the show today, Adam.
Appreciate you having me.
All right. Hey, I want to thank you for joining us here on Inner Edison today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, because I definitely did. And if you like what we do here, please follow for more. And thanks again, Adam.